All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Apologies for getting started just a few minutes late. As I'm sure you understand, a lot is moving right now in Congress and a lot of moving pieces that we're trying to stay on top of. So appreciate your patience, but really happy to have you all here with us today. Really quickly want to introduce myself. I am Zach Gertis. I am a campaign representative for Sierra Club's Living Economy program. I'm based in DC, which is Piscataway territory. I'm joined by two colleagues of mine here at Sierra Club who have been spending a lot of time directly meeting with members of Congress and helping us negotiate and work on this Build Back Better Act. So I want to quickly turn it over to them to introduce themselves and start off with Liz.
Hey folks, thanks so much for joining. I'm Liz Pereira and I work here in our federal policy team with Sierra Club in Washington, DC, and I cover mostly climate policy, environmental justice, and really just excited about this moment that we're all in. And I'll turn it over to Ben.
Hey everyone, good to be with you on a Friday afternoon. My name is Ben Beachy. I use he or they pronouns. Calling in from Piscataway land, DC. I'm the director of our Living Economy program, which fights for bold investments in climate, jobs, and justice, which is what we're here to talk about.
Amazing. Thank you, Ben and Liz, for taking some time to help explain what's going on in this big moment that we're in. So I'm sure a lot of people have been paying attention to the news and saw yesterday there were some major updates in our campaign to pass an infrastructure package that tackles the climate crisis, creates jobs, and addresses racial and economic injustice. A lot of this has been moving very quickly, though, and I'm sure it's tough to keep track unless you're someone who is deep in the weeds. So we want to convene this Facebook Live and offer some context and explain a little bit more about what has happened lately and what is going to come on for the next few days and few weeks to get this over the finish line. We are going to be sharing a lot of links and resources as well in the chat, so please stay tuned there and feel free to be asking any questions throughout, and we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can, but don't worry, we will be sharing more information over the next few days about this package and this big update that we're in. So I want to take a moment to frame this moment that we're in and take a step back and think about how we got to this point. So as I'm sure folks are aware, the IPCC report made it clear that we have an extremely narrow window to act at the speed and scale that the climate crisis demands. We cannot negotiate with this fact. We know that we need climate action right now. And we also have a very rare opportunity with Democratic control of the White House and both chambers of Congress, which we have not seen since 2009. And we know that the majority party often loses seats in the midterm elections. So we are at a key moment to pass historic legislation to address the climate crisis and all of these other issues that are at play. So we've for months been working on a campaign with a broad coalition of movement partners to pass an infrastructure package that tackles the climate crisis. And we know that there is an overwhelming amount of support from Americans across the country for a package that will address climate action, that will include things like paid family leave, universal pre-K, and fixing lead pipes. We know that all these issues are very popular. We know that in Arizona, for example, nearly 2 in 3 voters statewide, about 65%, say that they wanted to see the full $3.5 trillion package that we were previously looking at in Congress. So we know that across this country, people want to see action and they want to see it really soon. And in Sierra Club, we've been working with a broad coalition of partners that has been working for months, if not years, for work like this to make it through Congress. The process has been confusing and frustrating, a lot of back and forth negotiations, but we have come a long way. Thousands of Sierra Club volunteers and supporters have been making calls, showing up at rallies, lobbying their elected officials, and taking action together to get to this point that we are at right now. Movement partners have been courageously holding hunger strikes and sit-ins outside the White House, risking arrest and traveling thousands of miles to try and meet with their senators. So a lot of work has gone into this moment that we're in and pass a strong infrastructure package. And as of yesterday, we finally have details. So with that, I want to turn it over to you, Ben. And can you tell us a little bit about what happened yesterday?
Sure thing. So yesterday we took a big step forward in this historic push to win Build Back Better Act that would cut climate pollution in half by 2030 while advancing racial, economic, and environmental justice. That's been our goal this entire fight. And if you've been in it with us for a while, you know we've been fighting for not just months, but well over a year. And yet, yesterday, we took that big step forward because President Biden traveled to Congress to unveil his framework for Build Back Better Act. And as Zach mentioned, just shortly thereafter, we saw the full text. It's over 1,600 pages long. And do not worry, we will not belabor all the details for you. But let me just say this. This deal, what we saw unveiled yesterday, would be the largest ever investment in climate, jobs, and justice in U.S. history. Like, bar none. Like, there's no comparison. There's $555 billion included in this deal right now for climate and environmental justice. That is a bold sum, a sum that would help us expedite the transition to a more just 100% clean energy economy. And, you know, just for those of you who've been really, you know, calling members of Congress for months now, that remarkable top line number is really owes to a lot of hard work from a lot of us, millions of Sierra Club activists and our allies across a panoply of sister movements. It is through hundreds of lobby visits, tens of thousands of grassroots calls, dozens of media headlines that we have successfully fended off corporate lobbyists who tried to eliminate the investments that our communities desperately need. This framework, I think Liz is going to get into some of the more details, but let me just give you some teasers. There's bold investments through tax credits in clean energy that would dramatically expand our access to clean sources of wind and solar power. There's transportation investments in here that would boost access to union-built electric vehicles and clean public transit. There's investments to replace lead pipes nationwide so that we can actually achieve clean water. There's investments for retrofitting our homes to cut pollution and energy costs at the same time, to boost clean energy manufacturing, to protect our forests and urban green spaces, a civilian climate corps to create good jobs while shielding communities from climate disasters. I could go on. We didn't get everything. You never do in a deal. There are definitely things that, due to I'd say some failures of democracy, we did not get. Paid leave is not likely to be in this package. Building out of schools that would be clean energy, green schools is not included in this package. So there's things we didn't get, and we're going to be real about that as well. And yet we also have to look at just how far we've come. Like, it is improbable that we have gotten over $500 billion in this thing. You know, with the fight that we've been up against, you know, the people who've been fighting against this, that we've been able to get over $500 billion historic investments in climate, jobs, and justice is huge. We're not done yet, but this recent development should serve as fuel for what we hope is going to be the last leg of our fight.
Yeah, thank you, Ben, for offering that. Liz, you want to jump in and add a little bit more about what we won or did not win in this package?
Absolutely. And, obviously this framework and the House text that Ben mentioned that came out yesterday is a huge milestone. And we actually have been working this entire time with so many incredible coalitions to get this done across many different movements. And one of the coalitions I did want to just put in the chat is the Equitable and Just National Climate Platform and Forum, which is it's a collaboration between national environmental groups and environmental justice groups across the country, and has really been an amazing collaboration. And I would just want to make sure to put their release that came out yesterday on the things that they were most proud of, and we are most proud of on the environmental justice front, including environmental and climate justice block grants, investments in healthy ports, community pollution cleanup, equitable and sustainable community development, a civilian climate corps, which I know many of us were fighting for, a clean energy sustainability accelerator, which is basically a way of getting financing to states and localities to invest in clean energy. And within that, there's a commitment to Justice 40, which means that 40% of those investments are going to go to communities that have been overburdened by harmful pollution and racial and economic injustices for far too long. So we heard these things come out of the Biden-Harris administration, and now we're actually seeing these things in true legislative language, in law, in the country. And it is just amazing to see how far we've come, as Ben has said. And just to tick through a few more, we're also seeing incredible investments in historically Black colleges and universities, and rebates and tax credits to cut energy costs for households and to help households invest in clean energy. So we can go in, we could talk forever about what's in this bill. I mean, obviously $500 billion, $500 billion in climate investments. And really in investing in cleaning up the environment in general, cleaning up legacy pollution, Superfund, cleaning up water, as Ben has said, lead service line replacement, and investing in EVs, clean energy. So we are really seeing an incredible breadth of an achievement here, and we have a lot of work to do. It did not include everything that we wanted. The bill did not, for example, repeal domestic fossil fuel subsidies. It did repeal international fossil fuel subsidies, and that's a huge revenue raiser. That actually can save our country a lot of money and help us pay for these investments that we really need. So we want to see that fixed. We are going to continue to fight against some of the quote unquote false solutions that are in here that we don't really want to see, in terms of like CCS, 45Q. We don't want to see increased investment in CCS. Especially in the electric sector, where we feel like it is, we don't need to be moving in that direction. We're already moving to clean energy. And so we are continuing up the fight, and we've got our work cut out for us, but this is a huge milestone. And the House of Representatives, if this does pass, will really accomplish an incredible feat. And should be applauded for that.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I think this is related to what you were just saying, but we have a question from Martha on YouTube asking, are there any things that the Sierra Club would object to in this bill?
Right, definitely. We're fighting against subsidies for CCS in the electric sector, and 45Q in particular. There are a number of things that we think should be improved. Like of course, we want to see the repeal of fossil fuel subsidies, the domestic fossil fuel subsidies, and we're really also working to protect the Arctic, working to protect against offshore drilling, and we've got to keep all of these things strong in the bill. And so we're going to be there going through the details with a fine-tooth comb, as Ben said, to the 1,700 pages, and we are still going through it. But overall, we are seeing huge gains. Ben, do you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it.
We have a question from William on YouTube. Maybe Ben, you can take this one. What's the time frame for the $550 billion? Is it 10 years, 5 years?
Yeah, so that $550 billion is actually spread out across, like I counted this morning, 97 programs. So almost 100 climate and environmental justice programs are in there of varying amounts. Some of them, a lot of them are really small. Some of them are really big. The clean energy tax credits do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to cutting climate pollution in this package. And that's because they amount to $320 billion. That's not just, I should mention, that's not just like for electricity alone. That's to make sure that electric vehicles, union-built electric vehicles, are more accessible broadly to all of us. It makes it cheaper for folks to be able to retrofit their homes for increased efficiency, to put solar on the rooftops. So it's clean manufacturing that we should really, be. We need to be transitioning to a clean energy economy in a way that workers benefit from that transition. And part of that is manufacturing more of the goods that we need for a clean energy economy, including solar panels, wind turbines, battery storage, electric vehicles. And so there's a lot in that tax credits portion that I mentioned that would also boost our creation of good union manufacturing jobs while advancing clean energy. That's a lot all in one line item, and I'm emphasizing that one because that one is 10 years, to get to your question, and that's important. We have to have that one as 10 years because we need to send a signal to investors that they have the security that tax credit is going to be there for a full decade, so that today they invest to take advantage of it. If there was more uncertainty, if it was only going to last for a few years, it wouldn't just be an incremental loss. It would actually jeopardize the whole program. So we fought for that, not just Sierra Club, but like a broad swath of groups and coalitions, as Liz named. Others that we are part of include working with unions in the Blue Green Alliance, working with other climate and environmental justice groups in the Green New Deal Network, the Climate Action Campaign. We're part of there. We have no shortage of coalitions, and all of them have been fighting hard for many of these line items, and that one included. So that one is 10 years, but then there's other ones that are going to be shorter amount of time, and that's that we can live with that. I think we're not assuming that this is our only bite at the apple for the next 10 years. We hope not. We all want everyone to sleep as soon as we have a historic victory. But then at some point, we are going to need to come back and push for more at some point. So that's maybe a long-winded answer to your question, but we got 10 years for one of the bigger ticket items, which is the clean energy tax credits, and then a shorter duration for some of the others.
Thank you, Ben. And Liz, I wanted to jump back really quickly to an answer you were giving earlier, just to make sure we're explaining everything for folks. Can you explain what CCS and 45Q represent?
Apologies. We're talking in a world of acronyms. My fault. Carbon capture and storage is CCS, and that's essentially when you capture carbon from the exhaust of a coal plant, or and it could be any industry, and you're capturing CO2. You are basically concentrating it and ejecting it deep into the ground, where people claim it will stay permanently and won't have impacts on watersheds or groundwater. And also 45Q is a incentive to basically incentivize per megawatt hour a coal plant or natural gas plant that wants to apply for a subsidy and a tax credit for employing that technology, for installing that technology. So someone else in the chat answered that too. That's great.
Thank you, Liz. And this next question, I think, would maybe help us move on to this next piece. But I know we've been sharing a little bit about some of the takeaways, some of the wins and losses from this package. As Ben and Liz have said, it is it's a lot of text, a lot of pages that we have not fully gone through yet. So we will have more information coming. We're sharing in the chat the link to our initial statement, which has some of our initial reactions to this bill. And I encourage folks to look at those, but stay tuned. We will be sharing out more information in the coming days. But now want to shift us a little bit about what comes next. Sean on YouTube asked, it looks like reps have another week to work to add some things back in. Does it look like Build Back Better Act will be passed by November 15th? Ben or Liz, can you share a little bit about what's the process from this point on?
That's actually why I was a little bit late to the Facebook Live. My apologies for that. This is a very real-time Facebook Live because that's a hot topic right now. What are the next steps? I would say probably a week at most, actually, at this point. There's a real desire to get this thing done. Partly, I think, because people have been fighting for it for feels like forever now. It's over a year and a half. But I think also just because we don't want to have a thing linger out there. We want to make sure that we have a sense of momentum, that we actually, Congress has certainly got a track record of dysfunction, and we don't want to have a self-fulfilling narrative of dysfunction here. We think we can do big things, and this is a big thing, and we're on the precipice of doing it, so let's do it. So members of Congress, I think, are all itching from really all parts of at least the Democratic Party to get this thing done as soon as possible. We do want to get the details right. And so we're, as you heard, we are poring over the text. There's a few things that we want to get out of there. There's a few more things we want to get in there before all is said and done. We're fighting for those now. And then I am hopeful, though I won't bet on it, because if I would have bet every time that I thought we had a binding deadline in this process, I would have lost all my money. But next week, I think, might be a week where we see actual advancement in the House of Representatives of this bill. So it's really critical at this moment to be calling your reps and urge them to vote for the Build Back Better Act.
Thanks, Ben. Liz, anything you'd like to add there?
Nope, absolutely. I think we're right on the precipice of seeing this happen. So don't delay. Call your rep and make your interest known, and keep fighting for what you really want to see. And don't forget to celebrate.
Thank you both there. Yeah. And then, Ben, I'm wondering if you can answer a little bit about what this looks like a little bit more long term. Let's say we're at the point where Build Back Better Act is completely passed. What does it look like for this money rolling out to states?
Liz has done a lot of thinking on this as well, as have many people. So let me just say at the outset that I think sometimes national groups make the mistake of pushing to get a big win through Congress, and then they're like, sweet, what's next? And move on. That's not good enough, right? Like, equity is at the core of this entire project. And if we just allow the status quo filtering out of money from Congress into communities to happen as it always happens, that means largely folks that look like me, largely like middle-class white folks, are going to get a lot of the cash. And that's not, again, Build Back Better. We're not just saying build back like before. It's actually to chart a path towards a more just economy. And that's going to require a lot of attention from a lot of us to make sure that when the dollars are going out the door, they're accessible to communities that are actually on the front lines of the climate crisis, on the front lines of environmental injustice, on the front lines of economic insecurity and systemic racism. That means making sure that there's wide awareness of what those dollars are, what are the programs, and how can you access them. And then also a lot of pushing from those of us who are in DC, and from all of us probably pushing on our reps to say, here's how this needs to be done. Here are the rules that need to apply to these dollars, these trillions of dollars that are going out the door, to make sure that they do not simply reinforce the unjust status quo and indeed chart a path to a more equitable economy.
Absolutely. And the reality is it just kind of starts once we get this out the door, because making this real is about everybody in their communities getting to know what's in this bill, and then making your neighbors, educating yourself that these are incentives and a lot of help for all of us to move to clean energy. And in particular, as I mentioned, this Justice 40 commitment in legislative text, which is really about centering justice in the delivery of these funds, and actually prioritizing communities that need these funds the most. That will be critical for us to maintain vigilance in this process, because, as we know, those that have tend to always win, and the most powerful tend to benefit from these programs. So we really need to change the way this is done. And there's some fantastic folks working in environmental justice communities already in getting oversight committees passed at the local level, at the state level, to actually ensure that communities and environmental justice groups are at the table, labor is at the table when these funds go out the door, and there's true oversight and there's true understanding of what's available. So we're really just at the beginning of once we get this done. And I completely agree with Ben. We need to focus 100% on really how these funds are spent and ensuring that they're spent equitably and towards the goals that they've set out.
Thank you, Liz. Can Ben or Liz, can one of you reiterate our strategy and how this relates, this package, to the bipartisan infrastructure package that has also been an active conversation in Congress?
Sure, I can start. So for those of you not familiar with the bipartisan deal, it's a much smaller deal that was negotiated between as the name suggests, both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the White House. It's not only just much smaller, but it's not a climate deal. It would effectively, there's a study that just came out showing that it would mean a 1% blip in our climate pollution by 2030. We're trying to cut our climate pollution in half by 2030. So it is not a climate deal. It's also not an environmental justice deal. There's actually some provisions in it that would be actively harmful. It does not sufficiently protect frontline communities. And Liz might want to speak to that a little bit more. So what we're saying is that bipartisan deal, we can't vote on that and put that thing out there first while leaving the Build Back Better Act to an uncertain fate. That's not the path forward. Both bills must move together. That's what we mean when we say no climate, no deal. The climate deal is the Build Back Better Act. And if we're not getting the Build Back Better Act, then we don't get climate. So we have to make sure we're putting the Build Back Better Act first. That means both bills, again, just to say it again, both bills must move together. And the good news is that's the game plan right now. We have progressive champions in Congress fighting for that and saying that consistently. And I think more and more voices actually on Capitol Hill and in leadership are saying the same thing, that we to get the job done, we're going to have to move both those bills together. And as I alluded to, I think we might start seeing that sooner rather than later. So that's the game plan. That's the strategy. Here's hoping that the next time we do a Facebook Live, we'll be talking about how we moved both bills together.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I appreciate that answer. And I know that folks probably have a lot more questions about specific policy details in this package. We will be working on sharing more information as we dig through this full package so we can update you all and share the specifics that we are seeing in the package moving forward. But again, I just want to reiterate something that we've been saying. This is a critical moment, a critical step. We really need to keep the pressure on our members of Congress, make sure that they seal this final deal with strong investments that justice and science demand, and then get it through Congress. And just like Ben just said, it is not just moving forward the bipartisan package. We need to see the Build Back Better Act move forward first or together with the bipartisan package so we get this big investment in climate action. So in the chat, we'll be sharing both ways to call and email your members of Congress. Please urge them to hold the line and support the full Build Back Better Act and pass that before the bipartisan package. Right now, we're in this moment where we can finally pass a generational climate action bill that we really need, that science demands, and we cannot afford to pass a flawed bipartisan package by itself. So we really need all the help that we can get, and we really appreciate all of the work and organizing that volunteers like you have put in so far up to this moment. Also want to recognize that this campaign has really shown and emphasized the need for us to strengthen and restore our democracy. The programs that we've been discussing have been overwhelmingly popular across the country. Yet despite that, we saw corporate Democrats were actually able to negotiate downwards from a stronger package and remove a lot of key things that people wanted to see. This is not something that we want to see moving forward. So we really need to make sure that we address things like the filibuster and make sure that we're able to deliver on things like paid family leave, universal community college, and more. And we're going to need your help to do that. So we're going to drop in the link, a link to our filibuster action in the chat. Encourage you to take action there and join us in our democracy reform work as well to make sure that we can deliver on all of the things that we desperately need in this country moving forward. And also, just as we're closing out, want to really celebrate these victories, mourn these losses, and remember that people power made this possible and got us to this moment. Without all of your work, we definitely would have seen a package that probably wouldn't have addressed any of these priorities whatsoever. And really appreciate all of the work that you've done here. Protecting the freedom to vote and addressing the climate change is because of all of your work. So again, thank you so much for being here. And want to just reiterate one last time, please do contact your member of Congress, urge them to hold the line and pass this full package. But also want to say thank you all and have a great day. We'll be in touch soon. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you.